The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And you're diving into the Stone Zone. Well, I have to admit it, my name is in the Epstein files released by the Department of Justice, very specifically in an email exchange between Steve Bannon and convicted sex predator Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein complains about an interview that I did in which I exposed his deep connections to Bill and Hillary Clinton, including the fact that Epstein had, after his Florida sex conviction, provided the seed capital for both the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative. And he complains about it to Bannon. Bannon's response is, well, he says stuff like that all the time. Bannon asks Epstein where he saw this, and Epstein answers InfoWars with Alex Jones. You know, for some years now, I have been trying to give the warning about Steve Bannon, insisting, based on my own personal experience, that he wasn't the MAGA Trump cheerleader that he pretends to be in his podcast. See, Steve Bannon joined the 2016 Trump campaign after essentially a cabal of the CIA, the Democrats, and the media drove the far more competent Paul Manafort out of the campaign. Bannon joined the campaign as a condition of an enormous cash infusion from the Mercer family, Robert and Rebecca Mercer, conservative mega donors on Long Island. So Steve, despite his lack of any real elective political experience, got in the door. And I knew his days were numbered when I saw him on the cover of Time magazine, and the headline was Trump's Brain, because knowing Donald Trump for 50 years, I know that he's his own man, that he isn't coached, that he isn't scripted, that he isn't controlled, and that Bannon thought he could control him is idiotic. Within that time, Bannon tangled ferociously with Jared Kushner and presidential daughter Ivanka Trump. And you don't have to be a genius in politics to know that blood is thicker than water, and that fight with family you will always lose. Perhaps he's particularly sore about the fact that I wrote a piece for the Daily Caller about why I thought he outlived his usefulness to the president and should resign. And the next day he was fired. But now we know far more than we knew previously. These Epstein revelations show that, contrary to Steve's public claim that his only involvement was making a documentary out of some 15 hours of film that has been shot, only 2 of which have actually been released. The emails show something far worse. First of all, there's a constant denigration and attacks on Trump. At one point, Bannon even says it would be a mistake if Trump were to believe that he, rather than Bannon, was the centerpiece of this movement, which shows a very overblown view of his own importance. Once he became the Trump campaign manager and Manafort left, I tried to maintain a friendly and helpful relationship to him in view of the fact that I wanted the president to win. And as I say, he went to the grand jury, much to my surprise, after we both testified for the House Intelligence Committee, and he was asked about WikiLeaks. He gave a completely contrary answer. So since that time, I've been trying to warn that he's a snake. Now, with these recordings, it is really substantially worse than I had thought. Very clearly, he is coaching Epstein on his post-Florida sex conviction rehabilitation. He's telling Epstein, "You can't look so creepy." He instructs Epstein to say, if he's asked, that the girls he's with look underage, to insist, even though this is untrue, that they were of age. He constantly calls Trump stupid on a couple occasions. I mean, this is really nefarious stuff. I'm convinced, of course, that the existing hours of videotape, documentary tape, is in fact not makeable into a documentary at all. I think those are practice sessions. Based on the emails, it appears to me that Epstein had a 60 Minutes interview scheduled that was canceled right after he was surprisingly arrested. In fact, these emails reveal that Steve Bannon was supposed to go to the island to do another film practice session with Epstein 2 days after he was arrested, and that had to be canceled. Kind of interesting, the difference in which Epstein was arrested and the way I was. 29 heavily armed FBI agents stormed my home at 6 o'clock in the morning and brought a battering ram up to the front door, surrounded my home with shooters. 2 amphibious units arrived on the canal in my backyard. I lived on the water there in Fort Lauderdale. They came in 17 armored vehicles. There were 2 helicopters over foot. They roped off the entire block and had the backup of the local police. Epstein stepped off a plane in Teterboro. An FBI agent walked up to him and said, "Mr. Epstein," he said, "yes, I have a warrant for your arrest. I'm going to handcuff you, but not behind your back. And then we'll throw a coat over the handcuffs so we can walk through the private airport without your being identified." Now, why do I see a shocking difference in those two things? I'm still continue to be troubled, as I continue to say, with the idea that Epstein may not have killed himself. There are obviously all of these images that have popped up from Israel that are alleged to be Epstein with the beard. The problem is that in the age of AI, you have no idea if any of these things are real. We do know, however, that despite the continued claim of the Justice Department, and more specifically Bill Barr, that they insist that this was a suicide. So they expect us to believe that the 2 people who were watching Jeffrey Epstein in the Metropolitan facility, which is one of the most notorious facilities anywhere in the country in terms of it being a hard time, that they both happened to fall asleep at the same time, that the cameras happened to not be working. And then, of course, the Epstein family hired Michael Baden, very respected, longtime New York City medical examiner, a man who literally has done the autopsy in thousands of hanging cases. And his statement claims that the bones broken in Epstein's neck are inconsistent with his being hanged. I'll tell you what the left doesn't want to tell you was uncovered in this tranche of documents is further proof that it was Donald Trump who tipped off the Palm Beach police as to the nefarious activities of Jeffrey Epstein. This is completely consistent with what I wrote in my 2015 book, The Clintons' War on Women, the longest chapter in that book about Epstein. After receiving a tip, Michael Ryder, the chief of police, opened a 6-month undercover investigation in which he identified 33 instances of child sex trafficking, and I'm told at least 22 instances of statutory rape. Turned them over to the state's attorney, and then was shocked to find that the state's attorney, after Epstein hired Alan Dershowitz and Roy Black and several other big-name attorneys, and got that reduced to 1 count of solicitation, and later, after Ryder objected to the state's attorney in the county, got increased to solicitation of a minor. A somewhat more serious charge, but Epstein got a slap on the wrist. Michael Ryder, the same one Donald Trump tipped off from the beginning, then went to the U.S. attorney for Southern Florida and says something smells here. Either the prosecutor has been bought off or he's been intimidated. But Alexander Acosta, later the Secretary of Labor, investigated all of this and decided to go along with the state's slap on the wrist for the very dangerous Epstein and to seal the case so that none of us Americans would know. It's only because of a long and heroic fight in court by the Palm Beach Post do we know the rest of this story. Epstein was living like a king to begin with. He was the only sex offender in the history of Florida not to serve his time in a state penitentiary, but rather in the brand new air-conditioned wing of the Palm Beach County Jail, where his gourmet meals were brought in and where he was only required to be in jail from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. After such time, he was free to go. The Democrats want to talk about Epstein, but so far all they can produce is nonsense. Once again, in this latest production of documents, they give us the transcript of a alleged 13-year-old girl who insists that she was raped by Donald Trump and others, but she can't tell us who she is. She can't tell us where she is. She won't tell us her name. And the information is fully investigated and no evidence of it can be found. But the media, of course, runs with that. It's what they call the wrap-up smear. You see it going on with Tulsi Gabbard right now. They create a controversy over nothing. Two people in the deep state claim that they hear a conversation. They go to a third party, someone who's in a position to report it, and they tell him. He then becomes a quote-unquote whistleblower, carrying an entirely fabricated message, and he files a complaint with the Inspector General. That complaint is quickly classified. It's so secret, folks, we can't know what's in it, to make it even more mysterious. And the story, of course, is Tulsi Gabbard under investigation. What you don't learn is the investigation was thoroughly looked into and no charges were brought. Two foreigners, not even U.S. citizens, were overheard talking about a member of the Trump family, all of which was reported by Tulsi Gabbard. It's the same thing that they tried in the Ukraine impeachment trial. It's the same tired playbook. It's the same fake news, fake created controversy. Talked to the president the other day. He thinks Tulsi is doing a great job. And it's not incidental that these attacks on her come at the very time that she's looking at the question of the validity of the 2020 election, the security of the electronic voting machines, and what really happened in terms of mail-in ballots in the various states in 2020. This is, I think, vitally important now to clear the air on. The media did a great job of censoring and canceling anyone who asked reasonable questions, but now it's time for those reasonable questions to be answered. Remains to be seen what can be proven, particularly when it comes to the electronic voting machines. What can be proven, not conjecture, not theory, not conspiracy theory, but the truth. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Kind of more bad news for Steve Bannon. See, after Bannon left Trump and after he began his relationship with Epstein, which is blown out so spectacularly in his face, he began to take funding from a Chinese national who goes by the name of Miles Guo. Miles Guo testified after he was prosecuted and took the fifth 55 times when asked if his funds were CCP funds. Indeed, he remains incarcerated, a charge I believe he was paying Bannon to prevent happening. And of course, now he wants a pardon, which I think is highly illegal. There's also substantial evidence of a money trail from China to a Canadian bank, the Ontario Bank Ontario National Bank, to a bank account in the United States controlled by Bannon. Now, the real controller of that funds, the man Bannon dealt with directly, is not Guo, but the far more important Chinese figure, Xi. Xi is a member of the Communist Party Central Committee. Bannon phone records from the litigation show him in constant contact with his communist Chinese money handler. So I think things are about to get worse for him. People also seem to forget that Steve Bannon pled guilty to felony fraud for scheming to defraud donors out of $15 million in the so-called We Build the Wall campaign. And what's amazing about that is that while President Trump pardoned Bannon of the federal charges, his two co-conspirators went to jail for long periods of time. Then New York State re-indicted Bannon on those charges, which is proper because the double jeopardy doesn't apply since he never went to trial on the first charge. And to the surprise of everyone, Bannon pled guilty to embezzling $15 million, and a New York Democrat judge who had been in the Trump cases sentenced Steve Bannon to no jail time. I just find that extraordinarily interesting. I think it raises more questions about Steve Bannon's leadership in this movement. But then he's already announced that he's running for president in 2028. Somehow I think J.D. Vance, wherever he is right now, is not sweating. This guy has an extraordinary amount of baggage, and more of it rolls out every day. I have to be candid too. I was discussing all this, but until the great Elon Musk, the greatest single proponent of free speech and the First Amendment, other than the founding fathers himself, reposted what I had reported, it hasn't taken off. But now this character is getting the public scrutiny he very richly deserves. You're tuned into the Stone Zone, where you can get a front row seat on what's going on in American politics. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. When we come back, we're going to talk something about the fake news. You've heard of that, fake news. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Even more shocking news about the War Room's Steve Bannon. According to the UK Daily Mail, Bannon's third wife, a woman named Declan Clohessy, reported that Bannon left one of their rental homes in a shambles. According to the Post, she claimed that Bannon's ex-wife had been recently institutionalized. Neighbors remember the time when the Bannons lived at the home, reporting loud music and often speeding vehicles in the residence. Bannon registered to vote at this address in Florida. He would go on to leave the home in a total wreck. Sources told the UK Daily Mail that padlocks had been placed on some interior doors while other doors had been removed. But here's the shocking part. A hot tub had been destroyed, with damage to the hot tub being estimated at more than $14,000, according to landlords who kept the entirety of the security deposit. The bathtub was completely and totally covered with acid. Now, I've also uncovered a source who has the actual receipts for the purchase of that access. First, I thought, oh my God, is Steve Bannon dissolving his political enemies in the hot tub? I thought that was a pretty morbid thought. But chemists tell me that this particular acid is actively used for the creation of crystal meth. I'm not saying that he did that. I'm saying that what the chemist told me. But normally this would be dismissed as just being the disgusting slob he is. I don't understand how he thinks he's going to run for president when he refuses to take a bath. Therefore, it's a little surprising that the Department of Justice, particularly in view of all of his denigration of Trump in the emails, he calls Trump stupid. He tells Michael Wolff that Trump is not a billionaire, that the Trump organization is a criminal enterprise. He says that Don Trump Jr. is going to go to jail because he's a Russian asset. That Steve Bannon, the one who continually berates Trump in his emails with Epstein, But the Department of Justice is acting on a certification petition they have pending. Supreme Court asked the Department of Justice to respond. You see, on the 2nd of 9th, John Sauer, who is Bannon's lawyer, filed a response asking the court to grant cert and remand the case. This was the case against Bannon for his failure to testify and answer a subpoena. They asked that the conviction be thrown out under Rule 48A of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. Really, I think that's the wrong authority. I think the correct authority is 28 U.S. 2106, not Rule 48A. And it probably should have included a representation that the prosecution is contrary to the government's interests and policies. Prosecutor Janine Pirro filed a motion in the district court to dismiss the appeal, which the district judge doesn't have the authority to do with a 2106 remand from the Supreme Court. So the Justice Department essentially seems to be seeking to unwind Steve Bannon's indictment for his refusal to testify to the January 6th committee based on some technical defect in the subpoena. But if that is the case, then when will Peter Navarro get justice? Peter Navarro charged with the exact same crime. I think both of them were getting very bad advice from their lawyer. I was subpoenaed to the January 6th committee, as was my friend General Flynn, and I simply asserted my Fifth Amendment right not to answer politically loaded questions. I'd already had an extensive experience with Eric Swalwell and his sidekick, or I should say Adam Schiff and his sidekick, Adam Schiff, and their ability to twist and leak your words into some kind of crime where no crime exists. So I asserted my Fifth Amendment rights. I showed up to assert them in person, made sure I got some camera FaceTime out of it. Why Bannon did not do that. But as I say, this action by the Department of Justice, not even clear, by the way, that the court will grant it, doesn't undo his conviction in New York as an admitted thief, and doesn't undo any of these shocking Epstein allegations. Epstein actually gave him a very expensive Hermes Apple Watch. There's one particularly revolting exchange where Epstein offers Bannon the use of his Palm Beach mansion or his island, his private island, and Bannon responds by saying, "Thank you, brother." Who calls a convicted sex trafficker brother? It's really pretty nauseating. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar, who I really think should be deported, the Minnesota congressman, is facing a lot of backlash after posting a message on social media that suggests that President Trump is a pedophile worthy of a Somali-like execution. There is, of course, no evidence to that effect. Sharing a clip of President Donald Trump discussing fraud investigations in Minnesota, Congresswoman Omar wrote that at least in Somalia, they execute pedophiles, not elect them, which very clearly is an implicit violent threat towards the president. There's been great public outrage about this, but it goes back to a more basic question. One, how did Congresswoman Ilhan Omar get her incredible wealth? She was, at the time she was elected to Congress, she literally was worth $450. That's what she had in the bank. And today, there are estimates that her personal fortune is more than 12 million, probably closer to 18. She is the centerpiece of the Somali scam being run on NGOs, utilizing large federal grants and funding under various programs, but providing no real services. But more precisely is the central question of how she entered the country. This needs to be fully investigated, and if it is accurate, as has been reported, that she married her own brother as an illegal method to enter the country, then she should be denaturalized and she should be deported. This seems to me pretty simple. Now, the problem is, as I'm learning the hard way, is all of this AI is great. And I use several different of them. I use Grok and I use Chat GPT. The problem is that I often ask them questions that I know the correct answer to, And what I get back is the conventional narrative missing all of the fatal flaws in it. For example, Grok still thinks Lee Harvey Oswald killed John F. Kennedy, which is absurd. There's so much evidence today to the contrary. So you can't look up these questions on Grok. If you ask, did Ilhan Omar marry her own brother? I think you'll get a dodge of an answer. But I'd like to get to the answer to that question. I think it is an important one. The Trump administration posted very good job reports for 2026, delivering a surprisingly strong number for the American economy and part of the plan to make America great again. According to the Bureau of Labor Standards, the United States added 130,000 jobs in January, which nearly doubled the expectations, which were around 70,000. So when people ask me, how is Trump going to win the 2026 elections for the Republicans, this is the answer. Because as the late Al Jolson would say, you ain't seen nothing yet. Reagan actually used that line, attributing it to Jolson on the 84 campaign trail. Marks the strongest January beginning in years and outpaces last year's first month gain. At the same time, the unemployment rate ticked down from 4.4 to 4.3, signaling continued stability in the labor market. President Trump quickly celebrated the news, called it great job numbers, far greater than expected. Trump understands it's all in the headline, and declaring once again that America's golden age is underway. January's numbers offer reassurances the economy is regaining momentum, with much of the growth coming from healthcare, social assistance, and construction, with construction gains being particularly strong. Again, I think all of this is the ideal backdrop for the 2026 elections. Those panicking who are ready to throw in the towel don't understand that the American voters vote more than anything else on domestic economic issues. It's the economy, stupid, as my competitor James Carville would famously say. One of the few things he says that I agreed with. But food prices are down, not down as low as they're going to go. Gas prices are down sharply. Housing market prices are down, well below average. Somebody today reported they got a mortgage at 5%. I think this is because of the great job being done by the director of the Federal Housing and Finance Agency, Bill Pulte, as well as Secretary Scott Bessent. The president has a great economic team. But the big, beautiful bill brought us the biggest tax cut in history. But the full impact of those tax cuts is not yet to be fully felt, although it's certainly stimulating the economy as desired. It also gave us, of course, the end of the tax on tips, and now 88% of those receiving Social Security benefits will pay no taxes. The president's tariff program has brought billions of dollars, literally hundreds of billions of dollars of new revenues into the United States. The Supreme Court is actually questioning whether the President of the United States has the authority to make tariff deals with other countries. What planet do we live in? I mean, that's an alternative universe. That is yet another example of judicial tyranny. You see, when I went to elementary school, actually Lewisboro School in South Salem, New York, I was taught that we had three branches of government: the executive branch, that's the president and all the departments; the legislative branch, the Congress, the House, and the Senate; and the judicial branch. But above all, I was taught that the judicial branch was completely fair, that American justice was based on fairness, that everyone was entitled to a defense. You had to be proven guilty, or you had to be proven guilty. There was no presumption. You had to prove your innocence. And I think there may have been a day when the system really worked that way, but now it is completely and totally politicized. So it matters whether a prosecutor is a Democrat. It matters if a prosecutor has had a partisan background. It matters at the middle and lower levels of the administration. One of the great unfairnesses here is President Trump is not being allowed to name his U.S. attorneys because the two Democrat senators, for example, the two in New York, refused to give a so-called blue slip, or what is really a Senate tradition. It's their acquiescence for confirmation by the Senate. Now, Republicans gave Joe Biden, I think, every single one of the U.S. attorneys that he wanted, including states with 2 Republican senators. But the Democrats have a radical plan to deny President Trump any appointment to the prosecutor's office, the federal prosecutor, in any jurisdiction in America. We saw them do it in New Jersey. We saw them do it in Virginia. We've seen them do it elsewhere. And judges move quickly to fill that void, and the president doesn't control his own Justice Department at a certain level. I'm sure everybody saw yesterday, no big surprise, the D.C. courts refused to charge Senators Mark Kelly and Slotkin, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that no conservative, no Republican, no free thinker, no Trump supporter could ever get a fair trial from a jury in D.C., and no Democrat with overwhelming evidence of a serious crime will ever be indicted by a D.C. grand jury. The D.C. courts should be closed. D.C. is not a state. The infractions there can be tried in Virginia or Maryland, which, by the way, are both those jurisdictions almost as liberal. I'm Roger Stone, listening to the Stone Zone. We're talking about lawfare, the kind they waged at Donald Trump and General Flynn, and of course Rudy Giuliani and myself, and we're all still here and still fighting the good fight. We'll be right back in the Stone Zone to talk more on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Unfortunately, even I have to cope with fake news. There's an operation called the Broward Bulldog, written by an investigative reporter by the name of Dan Christensen. Now, Christensen's actually done some pretty good investigative work on the Broward County Sheriff, who has a very nefarious past. But when it comes to Roger Stone, he never lets facts get in the way. He has a new story out that says that I was fired as the principal pardon lobbyist for Roger Ver, who is sometimes known as Bitcoin Jesus. Roger Ver is one of the pioneers of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and he points out that that I publicly reported, as required by law, that Ver had paid me a fee. There's a number of problems with this report. First of all, Roger Ver never sought a pardon. Elon Musk had talked about a pardon for him. He was specifically charged when he decided to renounce his U.S. citizenship. You're required to pay an expatriation tax based on a formula. So he had his accountants, since all of his holdings were crypto, come up with that number based on the formula, give it to him in a formal opinion, and that's what he paid the U.S. government. They came back and charged him with tax evasion. That case, he never went to trial. He never sought a pardon. I was hired by him for general strategic advice. I never had any contact whatsoever with anyone in the executive office or branch of government, including the president of himself. Under my filing, I was permitted to speak to members of Congress about the underlying expatriation tax law, which is exceedingly flawed. So, but I did recommend 2 very able lawyers for Roger Ver. One is Chris Kise, who is the Florida State Solicitor General under a previous governor, a very able lawyer, and a tax attorney named Jeff Neiman, who had previously worked in the Justice Department Tax Division. They successfully negotiated a settlement to this case, which is why the contract I filed is correctly reported as having been terminated. So I wasn't fired. This is the exact same Dan Christensen who falsely reported that I had taken proceeds from an organization called Stop the Steal, which was actually set up in 2016 originally to do exit polling because I didn't trust the machines, and somehow used them to pay a $2 million 2006 tax debt, 3/4 of which is interest and penalties. He somehow claims that I skipped out on that. Unlike Hunter Biden, who failed to report $15 million in income, my wife and I reported every penny, as well as accurately reporting our assets. We simply were broken by the Mueller investigation. They'll give me no break on interest or penalties, and I will have to pay every last penny of that to the IRS. I got no break whatsoever. But he smeared me there again. So I don't know, maybe a different name, the Broward Bulldog, maybe the Broward Bull. Well, you get the idea. Anyway, thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. We're every day, 5 days a week, we tell you the inside skinny on American politics and how it's all about to go down, or how it all fits together. I have 50 years experience in the corroded rectum of the two-party system. I've worked in 13 presidential campaigns. I lean right, but I criticize Republicans and Democrats. I kind of just tell you the stone cold truth. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Roger Stone. Thanks for joining the Red Apple Audio Networks. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Tap the banner to learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
But I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
what do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.